The House tries hammering out a deal to fund a government spending bill and avoid the Friday midnight shutdown deadline.
So will it pass? They got 72 hours. House Speaker Mike Johnson joins us now. Mr. Speaker, you expected some blowback when you were putting this together as you try to get across the finish line and have the government pay for itself up until March. What could you tell us about this bill, and does it disturb you? Some Republicans seem to be very critical of it.
No, look, those are three of my great friends you just quoted there. They're not wrong about the government debt and deficits. It bothers us all. We've got it in our central focus. And when we start the new Congress in January, when Republicans are in control and DOJ is working on all six cylinders, we're going to be able to scale back the size and scope of government. But before we get to that point, remember, right now, we only control 1/3 of the federal government. Remember, Democrats are still in charge of the Senate and the White House. So what we've done is the conservative play call here, my friends that you just interviewed there, or that those clips were played, were part of this decision. We decided, even though we don't normally like short-term stopgap funding measures, it made sense here. Instead of doing, Chuck Schumer and Biden spending for 2025, we pushed this decision into March. It'll be March 14th. So the feature there is that we'll have Republican-controlled Congress and Trump back in the White House, and we get to decide spending for 2025. So that was a good.
Basically, what they're telling you is that they don't want this lame duck president and his lame duck Congress out here making decisions and enforcing us to live with a budget that is not voted on by the people in 2025, because the next time that they would have to vote on a full-year spending bill, it would be for 2026. So essentially, even though we've elected Trump president and we've changed and control all three legislative branches right now, we don't. And what Democrats are trying to do is shove through a bill that basically appeases all of their friends and their lobbyists and special interest groups, as well as push forward whatever their agenda is before Trump gets into office on January 20th. And what Trump is doing, and they're trying to paint him as a bad guy by saying that, oh man, he called all of his Republican friends and he told them to kill a bill. Well, yes, because Trump should not be presiding over a bill that he did not legislate on. What he's basically saying is we need to take every single measure to make sure that we're giving the American people what they want, because essentially Trump is acting as the president of the United States right now. He's the person that's negotiating with all of these different countries, including Canada and Mexico, as far as the trade deficit and making sure that we close off our borders so we don't have illegal migration coming into this country. And we put more of the onus on other countries for preventative measures, as well as making sure that we deport the people that's not inside here. He's the person that's having these conversations with these governors and these mayors, saying that you guys need to get on board and get these blue cities together and make sure that we deport these illegal migrants that's not supposed to be here, especially starting with the ones that have committed the most heinous crimes. They should have been deported in the first place. He's the person that's the acting president that got SoftBank to commit to over $100 billion and then potentially $200 billion, which includes over 100,000 jobs inside of the United States of America. He's the person that's really controlling what's going on in the White House, the acting president, even though he's the president-elect, whereas we don't hear anything from Biden. We don't hear anything from Kamala Harris. They're over there giving speeches talking about you guys, you large donors need to make sure that you stay on board, and they're having conversations about Kamala Harris possibly running for governor of California in 2026 and possibly president of the United States in 2028, either or, right? And so she's gauging interest. They already looking down the road. Meanwhile, this lame duck president, along with this Congress, is basically trying to push through this budget that has all of this bloat. And what they're then doing is saying, listen, if you guys don't push this through, oh no, they don't want to take care of farmers. Oh no, they don't want to take care of people that were affected by natural disasters. Oh no, they're going to shut down the government and the government workers are going to be affected for Christmas. That's not what the American people want. And so what Trump is saying is, okay, go ahead and shut it down for a month. Call they bluff. Because what we're not going to do is live with a trash budget for 1 of the 2 years prior to the midterm election. And what Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy has did is they've read through all 1,500 pages and said, nah, this is trash. They're voting on giving themselves raises. They're voting on building a football stadium inside of D.C. They voting on using y'all tax dollars for the same old while kicking the can down the road. We need to get things in place. We need to kick things into high gear, and we need to take care of business right now. And so basically what Mike Johnson, which is a Speaker of the House, what he's basically saying is, listen, my constituents aren't wrong. Even though they came up with a bipartisan agreement, this doesn't make sense. What we need to do is fund the federal government temporarily over the next 2 to 3 months, and then get a real spending bill when we have a real president in office that actually speaks to the best interests of the people.
Good thing. Yeah.
But Mr. Speaker, I think the confusing part is because typically when there's objection to bills like that, you hear the Freedom Caucus, which you heard Chip Roy. But you even have moderate members who are in big races. You got Mike Lawler, who is not, an extreme, fiscal conservative, but he's saying the same thing. So how did you lose the Freedom Caucus and the moderate members?
This is the sausage-making process, okay? Here's what this bill entails. It's a short-term funding extension until March 14, and that would have been an easy thing relatively to pass. But here's what happened. We also had to add, and due to circumstances outside of any of our control, emergency funding. We have two major emergencies. We had a record historic hurricane season that we all know, Helene and Milton and the rest, that destroyed a big swath of the country. We have to have funding for that. That's $100 billion to rebuild 6 states. And then on top of that, we have our farmers, our small farmers and ranchers, our food producers in this country are in jeopardy of going under permanently. They've had 3 lost years in a row, primarily because of Bidenomics and inflation and lots of other factors outside their control. So for the first time since I've been in Congress, guys, in 8 years, it's not just farmers and ranchers urgently needing the help. We now have the creditors, the lenders, the banks who give them those loans who are saying we have to have a stopgap measure. So when you add those things in, here's the other thing to remember. Our Democrat colleagues who have to vote on all this, they don't prioritize agriculture. They don't really care that much about farmers and ranchers because they're in rural red districts, right? But that's our food supply. If we crush domestic food supply, that is a direct threat to national security. We need all those small farmers and ranchers, and that's included in the bill as well. So when you add all those things together, that's what makes people nervous because the price.
You really don't have a choice. We have to fund those. We have to fund FEMA. We have to fund our farmers.
Right. And Mr. Speaker, it's not just so you've got a bunch of Republicans who are angry at you. They don't like this. And just in a couple of weeks, you're going to stand once again to run for Speaker of the House. And you don't need a bunch of Democrats mad at you. But and this is breaking news you do not know. You know who also does not like this? Elon Musk, the world's richest man, just tweeted this bill should not pass. The only way you're going to be able to pass it now, Mr. Speaker, is with Democrats. If you could, what's your message to Elon Musk?
Well, I was communicating with Elon last night. Elon and Vivek and I are on a text chain together. And I was explaining to them the background of this. And Vivek and I talked last night about almost midnight. And he said, look, I get it. He said, we understand you're in an impossible position. Everybody knows that. Remember, guys, we still have just a razor-thin margin of Republicans. So any bill has to have Democrat votes. They understand the situation. They said, it's not directed to you, Mr. Speaker, but we don't like the spending. I said, guess what, fellas? I don't either. We got to get this done because here's the key. By doing this, we are clearing the decks, and we are setting up for Trump to come in roaring back with the America First agenda. That's what we're going to run with gusto beginning January 3rd when we start the new Congress, when Republicans, again, are in control. And all of our fiscal conservative friends, I'm one of them, will be able to finally do the things that we've been wanting to do for the last couple of years. Right now, Democrats still control the pens, and that's the problem. So we got to get this thing done so we don't have the shutdown, so we get the short-term funding measure, and we get to March where we can put our fingerprints on the spending. That's when the big changes start, and we can't wait to get there.
Right. We'll see. We'll get there. And if you guys could write a bill where you get all the committees submit a bill and a budget, it would make it a lot easier.
And that's a major flex, and it's beneficial. It seems like everybody is playing a role within the Republican Party to make sure, again, that they execute on the wishes of the voters. And that's the thing. We are their bosses. We pay their salaries. We are the ones that should be determining what should and shouldn't happen, and we should be involved more than just during the election cycle. We should be involved every single day with calling our Congress members, with having these conversations and becoming informed. That way, when election season pulls up, whether it's midterm or you see the national election or even your local election, you can start to make more informed decisions. Let me know what y'all think inside of the chat. Make sure you tap into the Patreon. Link is in the description. We just did Block Club yesterday. It was absolutely awesome. And then Teach Henley, 40% off your first order plus 20% off for life.